Here.
Division 6, Marlon Barnes.
Here.
Division 5, Robert Paris is not present. Division 4, Justin Lane is not present. Division 3, Frank Donato.
Here.
Division 2, Keith Dyas.
Here.
Division 1, Shelley Sorsabal.
Here, thank you. General Manager Chisholm has an item for our consideration to add to this agenda.
Yes, thank you, Board Chairman Sorsabal. We had an item that came up on Monday. This item was the result of a meeting that occurred on Friday. And the item that came up is that the site's reservoir project, where the agency has 500 acre-feet of allocation, which is a very, very small allocation. The Tahoe Ranch is requested that the agency maintain that 500 allocation. And so in order to maintain the first-class status, approval is necessary before the 28th of February, and we just learned about this on Monday. And Government Code Section 54954.2 provides that a legislative body may take action on business not posting on the agenda upon a determination of 2/3 of the vote of the members of the legislative body. In this case, it would take a unanimous vote because we have 2 that are absent, to add this item to the agenda. There needs to be immediate action that is necessary, and there needs to be it came to our attention subsequent to the agenda being posted, all of which are true. If the agency chooses not to pursue this agenda item, and then after the 28th, that the water amount of allocation would take a second-class status as opposed to a first-class status that it currently exists. And the first item is to determine whether the board would like to add the item to the agenda, and then when it gets down to that agenda item further on into the agenda, we can talk about the merits with regards to whether to approve the agreement or not.
So to reiterate, we're just going to be voting at this time to add this item to the agenda with no action on the item. So would the board entertain a motion to add the site's reservoir project to this agenda as new business item number 6A3?
Also move. I'll say.
We don't need a roll call vote, right? No. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Okay, we will add that to our agenda. Thank you very much. Item number 4, public comments. If anybody is here that would like to speak to, if anybody in the audience wishes to address the board on any item that's not on the agenda, please feel free to do so now. Item number 5, consent calendar, action items. This is new on our agenda, and it's customary on most boards to have this. And these are the customary items that we approve. And just because this is the first time we've done the consent calendar, I'm just going to bring it to everybody's attention that 5A1, 5A2, and 5A3 can be accepted at one time. On 5A3, the check register, we have a change that is before you on a dollar amount on one of the items. So I just wanted to also bring that to your attention. So do I have a motion to accept the consent calendar?
I'll move. Second.
Any discussion? Okay. All agree?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes. New business. Item 4, communication and possible action. Item 6A1. We have a presentation here tonight by Matt Payne with WestWater regarding the NASDAQ water index. So Matt, we'd like to invite you to come on up and go ahead and enlighten us on this situation.
Good evening, Director Sorsabal and other members of the board. My name is Matt Payne with WestWater Research. Appreciate the opportunity to be here. 3 of you heard this presentation yesterday, so for you it'll just be additional reinforcement on this sort of new, unique concept. For the other 2 of you, this is brand new information, and I encourage everyone to ask questions as we go through. And so the topic of the presentation is the NASDAQ Velas California Water Index. This is a new partnership that's been launched between among my firm, WestWater Research, Velas Water, and NASDAQ. And I'll be just providing some information on the partnership today. We're not asking for any action or anything else other than questions and feedback. So I'll start with what we're trying to accomplish with the NQH2O index. That's our ticker symbol for the NASDAQ Velas California Water Index. The first item is price transparency. The water transfer market in California is opaque. What that means to us is that a lot of folks who are buying and selling water know what their prices are on their water deals, but they don't really have a lot of visibility into prices on other folks' water deals. So for that reason, we think there's a need for price transparency. We're trying to provide that by listing an index for water prices that is updated weekly, so it's almost in real time. You can see where water is traded. The index is available to all market participants, so anyone can go on the website and see the information. We're calculating the index using a consistent approach and methodology, and that methodology is described on the website for the index, so that's the other objective we're trying to accomplish is giving the water sector an ability to manage financial risk. The water sector is different from almost every other economic sector, the agricultural sector, the energy sector, because there isn't a way to manage water price risk. And the financial products that will be based on the NQH2O index will enable management of financial risk for the water sector. So the foundational piece of the partnership is the index itself, and I'll go through a little bit of detail on what the index is and how it's developed. Again, NQH2O is a price index that is intended to track water transfer prices in California. It is one indication of the current price of water. It's not the end-all, be-all, but it is one good indication of where prices are. And it is calculated based on water transfers from selected markets around California, including the surface water market, mostly the State Water Project and Central Valley Project regions, and then 4 adjudicated groundwater basins in Southern California where groundwater rights are traded actively. Again, the index is intended to reflect changes in the relative scarcity of water. What that means is that in dry years, we're going to see prices going up. And in wet years, we're going to see prices going down as water is less scarce. In the index, when you look it up, if you see the numbers on there, that is priced in dollars per acre foot per year. So the market the index covers, like I said, is the State Water Project and Central Valley Project service areas identified on this map in blue. And then also 4 adjudicated basins, which are listed on here, the Central Chino, Main Basin, and Mojave. Those are also active markets. By incorporating this large geographic area, we're trying to get sort of a broad sense of where prices are in California rather than more localized prices. There are 2 types of transactions that we're including, leases and sales of water entitlements. And how's the index calculated? It's pretty simple, really. We take the group of transactions that we see within a given week. We calculate a volume-weighted average price from the transactions in that week, and then make adjustments that are pretty simple, really. We're just weighting the surface water market heavier than the other markets because it's bigger in terms of volume and value traded. And then also we're making some adjustments to make sure that the prices are reported in comparable terms. The index is calculated once a week, close of business on every Wednesday, and the index value is updated on NASDAQ system every Wednesday. Every Wednesday or Thursday morning, you can go online and see what the new price of water was for the previous week. The index began at the end of October at a price of $511 per acre foot. And this figure just shows the historic index levels had we calculated it back to 2013. So this is just kind of a history of how the index might have behaved if we were publishing it since 2013. You know, as I mentioned, it's intended to reflect relative scarcity of water. So some things to note: in 2014, you see a price spike up to over $900 per acre foot. That was a historically dry year. We had a 5% allocation on the state water project, and prices spiked. Conversely, 2017, the wettest year in recent history, we saw prices kind of soften relative to prices in 2015 and 2016. So this is fluctuating with the market and with hydrology. So the index is foundational because it provides price transparency and one indication of where prices are, which is useful, but it also allows us to list derivative financial products that trade based on the index. And the first one that we're working on is NQH2O futures. So it's a futures contract on the price of water. This is the first exchange-traded financial product supported by the index, and probably the first exchange-traded derivative for water resources that exists. It will enable water users to manage water price risk, so it's a hedge tool. So essentially you can lock in a fixed price for your water regardless of wet conditions or dry conditions. And listing is anticipated at some point this year. It will be listed on the NASDAQ Futures Exchange, which is one of the largest futures exchanges in the U.S. So just breaking this down to the basics, what is a futures contract? It's simply an agreement to buy or sell a particular commodity, in this case water, at a predetermined price at a certain date in the future. Settlement occurs at that future date that's specified in the contract, and it can either be settled through physical delivery of the commodity, or more commonly, it'll be cash settled. And that's the case for this product. It's simply cash settled. We're not causing water to move from one location to another, from one buyer to another. It's simply a cash transaction that occurs at the end of the contract term. As I mentioned, this will be listed on the NASDAQ Futures Exchange. That has a number of benefits. Exchanges standardize contracts, so all the contracts are the same. You don't have to hire an attorney every time you want to do a transaction to drop a new contract. It takes away counterparty risk. So if you're just doing an over-the-counter trade, which is what we're all used to in the water market, you have to wonder, is the other party going to actually pay me for my water? Or if you're the buyer, is that water going to be delivered? The exchange eliminates all that risk. It provides price transparency, so anyone can go on and see what these contracts are trading for. And then also liquidity. The exchange essentially guarantees that when you want to trade, there will be another party on the other side of your trade. If you want to buy, there will be someone there to sell, and vice versa. And again, what we're trying to accomplish here is enabling folks in the water sector who are buying and selling water to hedge their price risk, so you know what you're going to get price-wise. And so how this works, how are we going to allow you to hedge your price without actually moving water around? So a great example is Party A agrees to sell 10,000 acre feet to Party B for a forward price, a future price of $500 per acre foot. And that will settle on April 30th, 2019, for example. Now, zoom forward to April 30th, 2019. You look at the NQH2O index, and it's at $200 an acre foot. You know, it's shaping up to be a wet year, so prices went down from 500 to 200. So the outcome there with the cash settled contract is that the seller, their account will be credited $300 per acre foot, or the difference between the future price and the index value on the settlement date. The other party on the deal, the buyer, unfortunately gets the short end of the stick on this one. Their account's debited $300 per acre foot. And no physical water changes hands. So you're just comparing the futures price to the index value on the settlement date and making a cash transaction based on those two values. So what if you're actually a seller in the water market? What if you have real water to sell? say you're a water agency, you're marketing 10,000 acre feet each year in spot market deals at prices that are whatever the prices in the market that should be reflected by the NQH2O index. The figure on this chart shows what your outcome would have been over the past 6 years. In 2013, your revenues from selling 10,000 acre feet would have been a little under $6 million. Would have jumped up in 2014 to over $9 million. Again, very dry year, high prices. And in the subsequent years, the prices would have softened and your revenues would have kind of hovered around $6 million a year. The challenge here is that you have a lot of variation in your revenues. Your standard deviation on these revenues is $1.5 million, which is pretty significant. That variability makes it challenging to budget, makes it challenging to plan. It's also difficult to use variable revenues for capital projects financing or servicing debt. So a solution would be to use this cash flow futures contract to even out your revenues. So in this example with the hedge, the light blue line on the top of the chart is the same as the last figure. You have a variable revenue coming in each year from selling physical water. Now the red line on the bottom chart is your revenue from your futures contract trades. When you net the two out, or add them together, you get that dark blue line that goes across the middle of the chart. So that's your net revenue between your physical water sales and your futures contract trades. And as you can see, it's much more stable. It's still hovering around that $6 million a year, but you don't have those wide swings. So, when it's a dry year in 2014, your physical water sales revenue is up, your futures contract revenue is down. But you end up about the same as you would in the previous year. Conversely, 2017 is a wet year, your physical water price is down, but you earn some money in your futures trade. So it ends up being about the same. Excuse me. And so the objective here is to smooth out those revenues, make it easier to do financial planning and finance capital projects. So that's really what this is trying to do. As next steps, we're looking for feedback on the index, on the futures contract. We already got some good feedback yesterday. It was pointed out that under current state law, public agencies have some restrictions around the types of investments they can make. Derivatives don't necessarily fall into those types of investments public agencies are authorized to make. So we're already thinking about and looking at ways to make it possible for public agencies to participate in this market. We have an attorney looking at that question. So any other feedback or questions are much appreciated. You're helpful to us, and we're hearing them. In addition, we're looking for interested parties to test the concept. Once we have the futures contract listed, we're going to need someone to trade it and try it out and see how it goes. So for more information, I've listed the NASDAQ website on here. You can click on that URL and you can go see every Wednesday what the new index price is. And with that, I'll take any questions, and I also have a handout to leave with you all.
Any questions?
Yeah, what is a commission if you sell water?
Yeah.
Thank you.
So I'm sorry, what was the question again?
What is a commission for selling water?
On the futures contract or physical water?
Both.
So the fee structure has not been established yet for the futures exchange. $2.50 a trade, some of them are $6 a trade. We don't know what it's going to be for this product yet. Physical water, it's up to whenever your broker negotiates. So,
It's all just private enterprise at that point, right?
Right.
Is that kind of like what you do in the farming industry with futures?
Yeah.
I've heard you talk about that before.
Right.
Help me understand a little bit
Yeah.
when you talked about that.
That's right. I mean, there's a lot of these products for agricultural markets. There's corn futures, there's fuel futures, all sorts of futures that help growers manage their price risks. So we're just trying to extend it to the next input to production.
Interesting.
Okay, thanks, Matt.
Thank you very much.
Your time coming out and going over that with us.
Appreciate it.
Item 6A2, resolution number R-19-08, concurrence of the nomination of Brett Paskey to the Executive Committee of ACWA/JPIA.
Yes, This particular item, the bio for Mr. Hastley is provided in your packet. He's requested that that AVEK endorse his candidacy for the executive committee of the JPIA. He's a former chairman of the Yuba Water Agency Board of Directors and a former member of the Yuba County Board of Supervisors. He previously served as vice president of Aqua from 16 through 17 term. It was on the Aqua JPI Executive Committee in 16-17. It's just an item that there was a request made, and staff is presenting that for your consideration. There's no, there's nothing good or bad or indifferent with regards to it, but it is good to have a water agency, on that Aqua board like that. So I recommend moving forward with it.
Is this how it's, how we've handled this in the past, when somebody would like a nomination, they just ask and
Yes.
present the information, and because they're a board member of different agencies that we're familiar with,
Correct.
then we...
That's the way it's happened in the past.
That's the way it's happened in the past. Well, do I have a motion for 6A2 to nominate Brett Beasley to the Executive Committee of Aqua and JPIA?
I'll move on to 6A2.
I'll second.
Any discussion? All in favor? Say
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes. Next is our added item 6A3, participation in the Sites Reservoir Project for 2019 in an amount not to exceed $60 per acre foot, and authorize the general manager to execute said agreement.
Yes, thank you very much. As mentioned previously, the Sites Project is an state water project, storage project north of Sacramento. The project's been in development for the last several years. Joint Powers Authority was formed in order to implement the project. The Joint Powers Authority was intending to have all of the specific cost information, the benefits, the yield, the risks, all those things worked out by January of this year. They were not able to accomplish that, so they needed another year to be able to provide the information that's necessary for all of the potential agencies that would be part of the project to make a decision, and to maintain the project moving forward. The $60 per acre foot of potential entitlement is consistent with the previous planning dollars that have been paid. The agency has notified Cajon Ranch. They're one of our customers on the last page of this of the packet I put in front of each of you have. Cajon Ranch has agreed to reimburse the agency for the $60 per acre foot cost, so they can maintain their 500 acre feet of entitlement. The advantages to AVEK is that we have the opportunity a year from now to decide whether to move forward with the project on a long-term basis once we know all the costs and the potential benefits. There's no real cost to the agency, since Cajon is picking up the amount of the 500 acre feet which they previously requested us to reserve for them. So the agreement that you have in front of you, the only thing it does do is say that it terminates at the end of the year, and that there's a maximum $60 per acre foot assessment. The balance of the agreement is exactly the same agreement that the board had passed previously, with some date changes. Otherwise, there's no material difference in the agreement per se. And as I mentioned previously, the sites committee met on Friday and required that all participants adopt a agreement like this by the 28th. Otherwise, they go from a first priority status to a second priority status. And by approving this particular agreement, it would help Tahone maintain their first priority status on the 500 acre feet. The project currently has unsubscribed supply, so that at the end of the year, if the agency determines that it wants to be part of the project, then they can sign up for more than the 500 acre feet. We're not required to. There's no other commitment here other than that. But it just leaves the options open for another year until we know all the particulars with regards to the risks and what the prices and costs might be.
So Dwayne, is this going to cost Tahone $30,000 just to
Correct.
continue to maintain?
Right, and they agreed to pay that.
Okay. I'll make a motion that we approve the agreement.
I'll second.
Any discussion? I have a question. One concern about this project is that we still do incur some administrative costs.
Mm-hmm.
How will that be handled going
Yes.
forward this year?
This year, what we've asked is that Tahone either provide reimbursement for those costs, or that they provide their own representatives to attend the meetings in order to get that information, so that there's no burden on the agency moving forward for
Excellent.
this year.
Any other questions? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes. Item 7. Finance Committee, Director Donato.
Okay, the Finance Committee met yesterday, went over the different items regarding the finance for the agency, and one of the items we went through thoroughly through was the item 781, adoption resolution on 19, designating signatures for a checking account relating to the High Desert Water Bank expenses. This is an account that's going to separate our cost of the actual bank versus our general fund, so we have a good accountability if anybody ever asks what it costs to build this bank, so it doesn't look like it's tied into the normal everyday business. So I'll move on board order 781 that we approved the checking account.
I'll second.
Any discussion? I have one question. It was noted at one point that that the who's the agency that we're doing the water bank with? Metropolitan.
Hudson Water District. Yes.
Metropolitan may have a problem with us having a separate account as opposed to separate accounting systems. Has that been addressed?
What will likely happen is once the Metropolitan Water District agreement is approved by the board, they'll have a separate additional account. We'll close this account out. We'll create a new account with separate accounting and a separate checking account associated with that. That would comply with the final agreement. So this is kind of an interim step between now and when that agreement.
Okay, so Met won't have a problem with this?
They won't have a problem because they would have a problem if we wanted to continue to use this account. We will close this account.
Okay. Okay, that's the difference. Okay,
Yes.
great. Any other questions? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes.
Okay, item 782, rebuild the central feeder pump. Who's going to discuss on that, please?
Yes, we'll go ahead and I'll have John Kosikian come up and discuss that.
Good evening.
Anything?
Okay, so erosion treatment plant, we have 2 pump stations. We have the SNP pump station where we're bypassing the treatment plant and running our SNP system. SNP pump station pumps water up to Mojave to our own feeder. When we're running the treatment plant, we go through the central feed pump station, which is what we're doing now. That pump station is about 40 years old. The pumps they lift water 350 feet to Mojave. We rebuilt the pump last year and it was pretty worn out. So there's 4 total. We're going to try to do 1 a year. We went and got we contacted 3 companies to give us proposals: DRC, Farm Pump Irrigation, and Bakersfield Well and Pump. Bakersfield Well and Pump was too busy; they weren't very interested. DRC gave us a pretty good bid of $62,000 total. Farm Pump came in at $56,000. That's a complete rebuild, and that's putting new bearings in the motor and getting it for probably last another 30 years plus. So we would recommend going with Farm Pump Irrigation.
Okay, I move on board order A2 to rebuild the central feeder pump.
Quick question, so the 56.
Excuse me, can we get a second first and then we can open it up for discussion? Thank you.
I second it.
Okay.
Okay.
Sorry,
So
go ahead.
the price for the central feeder pump, that's per pump, right?
Yeah, it'll be per pump, and we try to budget 1 per year.
John, I had a question also. What was the warranty on those pumps?
The warranty after the rebuild is 1 year.
1 year?
Yeah,
Is that pretty standard?
I think so. And we rotate the pumps so that we're not always on the same pump, so we try to get equal hours on all of them. But the one, DRC did the one last year. It's worked very well. And Farm Pump Irrigation has a great reputation. I'm sure it will be just as good.
So the one built last year only lasted a year, like you said, right?
Well, we've had it in service for a year. It'll last, I'm sure it'll last 25 or 30 years.
Oh,
Yeah.
okay.
I have
One thing I want to say, John, one thing over the years you've been really good at is getting bids, and then even the people that are not interested, you get feedback, what's going on, you feed the board, and that's because we're not involved with that every day to day. So I really appreciate that, we're doing our due diligence to try to get the best and lowest price and quality at the same time.
Thank you. Thank you. We have a good staff that tries to always get bang for our buck.
Yeah. John, one last question. You say you're going to try to rebuild 1 a year. What are your constraints?
Well, there's really no constraints, Shelley, other than we look at our overall operational budget, and if we think now that we have we'll have 2 brand new pumps, and 2 pumps that are still serviceable, we may, that $56,000 or $60,000 may be better spent somewhere else in operations. We try to keep our budget going in that kind of
Part of the asset management.
No, that's excellent. So
Right.
that's why this is good to know. When you
Yeah.
say try, what try means.
It just means trying to get the
Work
most.
it in the budget if that's
Right.
what you need.
Right.
Great.
Okay.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Okay, all in favor, say aye.
All right.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes. Item, oh, that's
Okay,
yours,
it's
sorry.
okay. You want to
Moving right along.
Go ahead. 783, purchase IC system for analyst, bromide and bromide terminal scientific, 47,832 is the dollar amount, and who's going to discuss that?
That'll be Jordan Ray who will make that presentation for you.
Whoops.
I'm sorry, I gave her the day off, so, gave her the night off, so Paul will provide that for you. Okay.
Did she need to recover from our meeting yesterday?
No,
Oh, okay.
no, not at all. She's very happy.
No, I know, I'm just playing.
Yeah, what we have here is, we have a piece of equipment that's about 8 or 9 years old. That piece of equipment is used to test for bromate and bromide that's in our water. And that's associated with the salt water or the salt content that comes in through mainly in the summertime period. And that is a precursor to THMs once we have that bromate and bromide in contact with our ozone. So it's very important that we have an accurate number of what those levels are so that we can adjust our ozone dosage appropriately so that we don't form THMs throughout the system. The current device that we have now has been marginally operational since October. We're going to be leading up to our peak period in the summertime when this information is key. And so staff is recommending that we move forward with this replacement purchase. It's about 8-9 years old, the existing unit. They don't make any parts for it anymore. We've had a couple of technicians out that have rebuilt it 2 or 3 times trying to get it to work, and it's been sketchy at best. So staff is recommending that we go through this replacement.
Okay, I move on board 783 to purchase it, $27,133.23.
I'll second the motion.
Any discussion?
Yeah, I'd say so. We went through this very thoroughly yesterday. It's something we have to have. One thing I asked them was is they give us a little more better warning when it comes to these things. We said if we didn't purchase this piece of equipment, we sent them out to have these studies done, it would be, could take anywhere from 10 to 15 days to get the stuff back. So this equipment is imperative. We get it for the agency.
Now, is the old piece down?
Pardon me?
Is the old unit down?
Yeah, it's down. Yeah, it's really, that was, I'm not, I mean, we that's why we were kind of joking, because saying, you know, this is something we have to have. There were signs happening, so, we try to budget as a board for things, and this is kind of something that's a necessity, has to be done. And our new manager, our chemist manager, is learning, that we need to do these kind of things a little more advanced, so we don't have an issue. But
I have a couple of questions. $1,666.67. And since this purchase order is over $25,000, it requires board approval to move forward. We don't have any choice as far as paying the bill because it's part of the administrative assessments for that agency.
And it's part of our budget.
It's part of our budget. Okay, I'll move on board order 784.
Any discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes.
that concludes my report.
Can you please put that on the agenda for me? Anyways, okay, so then 7, the Adjudication Water Master Committee. Director Harris is not here, so I'll go ahead and ask Director Donato. Do you have anything to say about that?
We have a little presentation we'd like to provide, if that's okay. Matt did talk to you about what was.
Is that going to be open or closed?
No, it's
It'll be open, because it's stuff, it's going to be
Okay,
discussed tomorrow.
so you want to do it now?
Yeah.
Okay, go ahead.
All right. So included in your board packet is a copy of the agenda for tomorrow's Water Master meeting. It's on page 34. So yesterday we met with the Water Master Ad Hoc Committee of Director Paris, Donato, and Barnes. And we discussed a couple of items that are going to be covered tomorrow at the Water Master meeting. And we wanted to take this opportunity to discuss with the full board and give direction to our representative tomorrow. So they have some direction going into the meeting. So first,
who will our representative be tomorrow?
so my understanding is Director Paris is going to be absent, so Dwayne is.
Okay, yeah, that's what I wanted to be sure that whoever that person was got the information.
Yeah.
Okay.
Before we get to those items, I'd like to report that as part of our payment of bills, we're in the process now of AVEK invoicing monthly for our administrative services. So I'm sure you're happy to hear that, rather than waiting through midway through the year or at the end of the year to invoice. So we're on a routine monthly basis. And then one of the items being considered tomorrow is a carryover item from last meeting, and it has to do with Water Master's jurisdiction over parcels that straddle the basin boundary. you recall, this has to do, if you envision the boundary of the adjudication, and if it bisects an existing parcel. Last month, the water master attorney issued a memo or an opinion that even if the well is outside that boundary, because the parcel is bisected by the basin boundary, it is under the jurisdiction of the water master. So he's kind of revised his opinion based on further investigation and review and comments. Now it says if the well is outside that basin boundary, that it could be treated on a case-by-case situation as to whether it's under the jurisdiction of the water master. And it has more to do with maybe the quantity or capacity of the well and whether it would have any material harm on the basin. So it's a flip-flop from what the previous opinion was. Because before it was regardless of how much of the existing parcel is in the boundary, even if the well was outside, it was under jurisdiction. Now he's recommending that each...
No matter what size the well was.
No matter what size the well was. Now it needs to be treated on a case-by-case.
You know, what I don't like about the original position of the attorney is that theoretically, one well could be located in two different groundwater basins and be assessed by two different water masters. So I've always favored the concept of the physical location of the well and identifying which basin it's in. I don't think that just because it's part of a parcel that is partially in a basin means that the well is in the basin.
Exactly. So we agree that the revised opinion is much better.
But on the commercial side, that's going to be on a case-by-case basis.
Case-by-case.
The domestic, we should use the word domestic and commercial, that way we, for the record, people would understand what we're talking about. Okay.
And
What about
so that's going to be discussed tomorrow.
I'm in favor, we, the committee, and Director Pierce was on the phone, we're all agreeing agreements that, you know, where the well physically, the physical location of the well should determine if it's in or not in the boundary of that. And to give you an example, I brought this up before, is that insurance companies, when it comes to flood, if you're in a legal description of a flood, they don't, if you can prove to them that it's elevated 50, 60 feet up, because you're on a 5-acre parcel, they will exempt you from flood insurance. So it's the same thing, similar to that. Just because it touches the legal description doesn't mean it's automatically to be detrimental to, you know, people.
Very good.
Well, if the committee believes the actual physical location of the well determines which basin it's in, then that conflicts with the current proposal by the attorney of the water master. And there should not be a case-by-case analysis. It should be
Either in
black
or
and
out.
white, either it's in or out.
That's right, exactly. Well, that's
We're not, well, that position is contrary to what's being proposed.
well,
So I think it can be discussed tomorrow, and those points can be brought up. I think the recommendation moving forward is to incorporate, you know, have this discussion and incorporate the language into the final rules and regulations as to.
but there, and maybe it needs to be massaged a little bit more, but there is a potential issue. If you got somebody pumping 1,000 gallons a minute, you know, out of a well, and it's 10 feet away from the legal description, it could affect the basin, depending on how.
It could affect two basins.
Well, yeah, well, two, right, exactly. So, but those commercial wells are the ones that they, on a case-by-case basis. The domestic single-family well, they're not concerned with that. That's the way it's proposed,
That's the way
right?
it's kind of written
Yeah.
as,
The single-family.
So residential wells would not be viewed on a case-by-case basis.
Right.
yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
And that's because they're a smaller pumper, like drawing so much of
Yeah, small pumper, you know, maybe a couple acre feet per year.
Have they identified the casing of what is non-domestic?
Like the casing size, diameter?
Yeah, it's a 6/8, so what, they
No, they haven't. It's based more on the quantity per year. So it's at 1.2 to 3 acre feet per year is what qualifies
Okay,
as a
that's probably a better
small
way.
pumper or
Yeah,
domestic.
because if something happens, they have a commercial well, and put a small pump in there, and only pumping out 2 acre feet of water.
Exactly.
I can see that. That would be fair. There's a lot of those old farm ranches that have that kind of facilities like that.
So there's quite a few parcels that fall into this situation. You know,
Yeah.
If you look at the perimeter of the basin, it's bisecting hundreds of parcels.
I know.
You know, and Director Dyas's point is important, especially to the north of the Antelope Valley groundwater basin where it's adjacent to the Fremont basin. So that's the scenario where there's a clear line between two separate groundwater basins.
Right. I know in the advisory meeting, we discussed it. I think the consensus was that it was to be case by case because it would cost so much, you know, to identify all the wells.
Parcels and situations.
Yeah, so.
So that's that item, and then another item that will be discussed tomorrow is meter compliance. We're trying to hone in on getting a detailed list and status of where all of the parties lie regarding complying with the metering requirements. So we've got kind of 3 different letters that we've drafted with the legal counsel and developed a list to show everybody and be transparent as to who's currently in compliance, who is currently communicating with the water master attorney and working towards getting in compliance. We realize there's some restrictions as far as getting installers out there and scheduled for meter installation. And then there's the bad list, which they're silent. You know, there's been no communication with the water master engineer on getting meters installed. So they drafted 3 different scenarios, letters, to send out to all the parties. So and the goal of this is to get to the point where everybody is metered. And then,
Commercial, right?
well, this is primarily Exhibit 4 holders, so landowners, and then as well Exhibit 3, which is the public water tracts. So this doesn't have to do with the small pumper class or domestic.
Just wanted to make sure I wasn't on the bad list.
Yeah. No, you're fine.
Yeah, small pumpers are exempt from metering.
Correct, yeah. And then the last item we discussed yesterday was brought up by one of the board members to visit the idea or concept of reducing the frequency of the board meetings. So maybe go to every other month versus monthly. And Directors Donato and Barnes can correct me, but yesterday we kind of honed in on AVEK's position is that we want to continue with meeting monthly because there's a lot going on with new well applications and transfers. And if we don't have policies in place where administratively we can't handle those things at the staff level, they need to be approved by the board, and it doesn't seem right to make people wait potentially 2 months to get their well application approved.
Well, how much would this save in funds? Because I know their budget's so thin.
Yeah, the advisory committee asked the same question, and you know what it really saves is a little bit of time for admin staff in preparing the agenda. And then there would be some savings with the attorney and engineer traveling to the meetings and attending the meetings on every other month versus monthly.
Yeah,
It's not as,
Couldn't they every other month do a teleconference?
well, that's what, at the committee yesterday, I actually said, they don't even have to come at all. What are they coming for? We just spent $200,000 on this stuff. They can, and they have the money, they can talk, communicate with this. They don't need to be here.
The engineer already
You know what,
says.
they do not need to be here. You know what? I work for a Fortune 500 company, and my executive officers that I work for, they don't all meet. They do the teleconferencing. By doing that alone will be enough money to save so they can meet every month.
now with the water master engineer.
Right.
You know, he's committed to, you know, calling in roughly 30.
You know what? We got to change. Okay. How many people, when they first came out and said, "I'll never use one," or an answering machine in your house says, "I'll never use one." Okay. Well, guess what? We have it. We need to start using it to save the taxpayers money and be able to meet. you know, as time goes on. That's just what it is. What are we gonna do in the next 5 years? I mean, it's gonna get, there'll be more people and more demand on this stuff, so we might as well start getting in the swing of things.
Can we do teleconference, I mean, not teleconferencing, but video conferencing?
Sure, it's right there, see it?
Yeah, we have
But I don't know if we
we
have.
have the hardware, but I
Yeah.
think we need some work on the software
Right,
side.
that's what I
Yeah.
thought we needed
They
to
can't-
work on that.
Yeah, but they can talk about tomorrow, they're using our facilities, it can be done.
Right, but they can do teleconferencing anyway.
Yeah, in the meantime, they can just talk.
Right.
In fact, that was the whole thing, we called them yesterday, right?
Yep.
All three direct, were you here yesterday?
Yeah.
You were here?
I wasn't here, no.
No, so all three of us were at 3 different locations, right?
Right.
And we were talking like right here.
Yeah.
So it does work very, very well.
So that's all I had to report. I think William's got direction for tomorrow to represent us
Clear.
well.
Okay.
Could I ask some more questions?
Yeah.
For the agenda tomorrow, item 9C, well applications revised.
Okay, so if you recall at the last meeting, we went through and revised the fee schedule, what it costs to process various well applications and transfer forms. So the previous forms all had dollar amounts on the forms. So this is simply removing the dollar amount and referring to the fee schedule. So that every time we modify the fee schedule, we're not having to go back and revise the forms.
Because it also was wrong too, because you had 750 instead of 850.
Yeah.
So this is just gonna leave it blank, right?
Yeah. So this is simply agreeing to modify the forms to reflect
Okay.
that.
And item 12B, memorandum on requirement to have a civil engineer stamp on single-family residential well applications.
So this is a requirement in the judgment that requires for a new single-family residential wells to have a civil engineer review a conservation plan as part of their application process to get a new well permit approved. And the Water Master Board has requested to look into that and see if there's a way that we can remove that engineer's stamp requirement from that requirement on the application. So Mr. Parkin reviewed that, issued a memo, and his recommendation or opinion is that that requirement needs to stay because of the way it's listed in the judgment.
Now, does this only apply to new wells or replacement wells for single-family?
This is only for new wells.
Okay.
Yeah, it's not for
Well,
replacement
well,
wells are pretty.
You said, he didn't catch what you just said.
Replacement
Well,
wells?
a replacement one is a new well.
No, the process for replacing an existing well on the same.
That's double standards. Because you're pumping, you're drilling a hole, whether it's a replacement well or a new
Replacement
well.
well is if you've had an existing well that's under the jurisdiction of the judgment,
It's
and
true.
then if something happens to it mechanically, structurally, and you're having to replace it, that well is abandoned and you're drilling a new well.
Yeah, I think, I personally believe that needs to be, get eliminated, even if they have to go back to the judge. Because these poor people, you're gonna charge them $300 to $400, you didn't ask them what it's gonna cost. $300 to $400 is kind of what I'm hearing, and that's today's cost. What's it gonna be 3 years from now? It's like a certificate of compliance. When I first came out, they were $200. Now I found out that the county's charging $2,000 for a certificate of compliance. For what? For what? And this is it's a sad situation. We need, it needs to be addressed. I'm not gonna do it, another thing to do tomorrow, but it needs to be addressed because there's a lot of people out here that like to drill a well. And the next thing you know, it's gonna cost them $3,000 to $4,000, 3 to 5 years from now, because the engineers, the civil engineers are gonna say, well, I'm not gonna do this for less than $500. It's never gonna end.
So tomorrow, this item is teed up for just a discussion by Craig Harton to introduce to the board. So I imagine there'll be some discussion tomorrow, maybe another action to come back at a future date.
Well, and delays too. Go ahead. Nothing is delays. Go ahead.
Matt, on the rules and regs with the 5 attorneys coming back on board, have you talked to the board about that?
No, not since the last board meeting.
Do you want to brief them on that, or do you want to?
So at the, yeah, I can. So at the last board meeting, you know, there's been a push to try to get some traction and wrap up the drafting of the rules and regulations document. You know, because we've got sections, various sections of the rules and regs completed, but not a comprehensive document yet. And, you know, that was our goal a couple of years ago, is to get a set of rules and regulations. So that seems to be dragging on a little bit. And so it was discussed at the last meeting to, in order to kind of expedite the review of that. Once the water master engineer has a draft rules and regulations document, she'll submit it to Craig Parton for review and input. And then he has suggested that it would be nice to have a legal team that could help review that document before it goes to the advisory committee for input in the public. So each board member has been directed to appoint their legal representative to review.
Crazy. You know, getting 4 attorneys in the room, you're gonna have 4 different, I went through it for 16 years up in Sacramento. 5 attorneys. It's another milking the cow.
But this has always been a point of contention.
I'd rather wait another year and have one. You know why? I'm telling you, there's gonna be challenges. Because each one of them is gonna read it 5 different ways. And that's how we went through it when we got to the very end with this whole thing with return flows and everything else. You know what? You guys, you knew it, yeah. No. You know, I'm not gonna, I won't support that.
So that's not on the agenda for discussion tomorrow.
5 return, what are they gonna pick?
Yeah, that'd be a bad idea.
You know exactly where that's going, right?
Oh, yeah.
It's just a report.
Drag it, they really drag it out.
I know the landowner's position was to just review it, Calandry and Dennis Atkinson, so I think we need to talk to our 2 landowner representatives on the Water Master Board.
I have a question for you. You just 5 minutes ago telling us how, the guy out of Little Rock, what's his name? The director?
For Little Rock Creek Irrigation District?
No, he's on the board, Water Master.
Leo people?
Yeah, Leo Tebow.
What's his name?
Leo.
Leo, I'm sorry, Leo. You just said 5 to 10 minutes ago that Leo wants to go every other month with the thing to cut down costs, right? Do you know it's gonna be 10 times more cost with 5 attorneys in a room trying to finalize what the judgment says? I mean, that's crazy.
Yeah.
And the last question, where's the money coming from?
Well, that wasn't laid out, but,
Representatives, I would think.
I could,
whoever's appointed.
Yeah, wait,
let me say what,
Did you just say you could raise it from $5 an acre foot to 10?
well, that was a landowner's concern because a lot of the public water suppliers still have their attorneys, you know, as we speak, and landowners don't. So my thought was, on the advisory committee, was to let's not go with the attorney way and let Pardon do his job. So,
But that's not Parton's.
well, Water Master / Craig Pardon.
But I mean, that's not
For the
his
rules and
suggestion,
regs.
right?
Excuse me?
That wasn't his.
No, it was in the advisory board when we discussed. We just
Oh, the
brought it up
advisory
ourselves.
board wanted 5?
No, they didn't, but we talked about it. And what did they come up with? What was the final?
They didn't, I think it's still mixed.
Yeah.
Yeah. Some people,
I think before they go too far, somebody's gonna ask them how they gonna budget for that. That's the first thing you should ask. How are you gonna budget for that? You gotta have a budget. And at $300, $400, $500 an hour, I'm telling you, you're gonna see 5 times, you're talking about $50,000 a month attorney fees. So, you know, I mean, farmers don't care, I mean, you know, or the public, I mean, come on, I mean, somebody's gonna have to pay for that.
Right.
Matt, can you tell us about item 12C, memorandum, small pumper class water rights allocation?
you know, I didn't review that one. We got it late from Parton. It's included in the board packet for tomorrow. Craig is just gonna walk through that memo, but
Okay.
I don't know enough about it to discuss it today.
Okay. Thanks.
Any other questions? Okay, great.
All right, thank you.
Thank you for your report. Thank you. Item 8, general manager's report.
Okay. Okay, this is the general manager's report for February 26th. 2019. Northern California 10-day forecast is for significant snow and rain, so we have more water coming our way. This is the graph I've been showing you, and you can see that February is really been a really great year for moisture within our area. Both January and February are well above average. The gold line is the average line. You can see that November we were about average, December a little bit below, but January and February well above average. Here's our graphs that we use as far as the San Joaquin and the northern tier, and you can see from here that we're above average. Here's the northern section, and you can see it flattened out a little bit, but it's going to rise over the next 10 days. Also, the same is occurring here in the San Joaquin. The San Joaquin is particularly important because as the San Joaquin flows, that means that the pumps can go at a much higher level than they would be otherwise without a San Joaquin river flow. Here's our reservoir levels. You can see that even at Lake Orville, we're moving up with the flow, and that's going to continue to fill over the next 10 days or so. We're well below the flood restrictions, but it's moving forward. The rest of the reservoirs are pretty full. San Luis Reservoir is full. Here's the graph for normal for Lake Orville. You can see we're a little bit below the average line. However, because of the artificially low requirements that the Orville has because of this emergency spillway, we will anticipate that to continue. And then this is the San Luis Reservoir conditions. You can see we're right up here. Let's see this position. Trying to move the mouse here. You can see this is pretty high up. Just won't go there. You can see we're right there. So it's pretty full, as you can tell. I will notice that there has been Article 21 water available the last 2 weeks, and the agency's taken advantage of that Article 21 water, and we have not spilled out of San Luis Reservoir like some of the other agency has. Here's our snow levels. You can see this is the northern portion, the central portion, and the southern San Joaquin Valley. You can see the snow levels are well above average for all three zones. Our current Table A allocation was increased to 35%, and we're at 141% of average for the snowpack. This is the, want to give you a little update on the Upper Amargosa Creek Recharge Project. They've estimated that they're 27% complete as of the end of January. AVEK's contribution to date was a little over $500,000. We had committed $2.5 million for the project. You can see that the concrete turnout structure in the medium vault is complete. And that the Joshua Tree relocation that was required as part of the project was complete, and all the site grading has begun. Completion date at this point is 11/23/19, so November of this next year. I want to give you here's a little video here to show you the cofferdam actually being installed. The two cranes moving it around, and some droid footage there. So, and I want to give you a little bit of input with regards to Big Rock Creek. This is the outlet structure that was constructed by staff on the Big Rock Creek Recharge Project. It's located here in a location very close to Crystal Air, right at this location right here. This Highway 138, as you go across, and then the aqueduct moves through this area here. You can see here's the, startup occurred on February 22nd at 20 CFS. And we, once we found flows crossing Avenue T, the very next day we had to slow the runoff down. We have a total of 5,500 acre feet, 34.55 acre feet has been charged at the Big Rock Creek to date. We'll continue to work this for the next month or two because of the heavy flows from the rain and all that. It's taking a little bit longer.
I have a question on that. So, for that thing to be successful, there's going to have to be some type of
Correct.
Drainage that's going to have to go underneath the road. So
Right,
you
yeah,
have this
right,
problem.
for T, yeah. That'll be part of the.
I was just thinking about that when you said
Yeah,
that
yeah,
because
yeah. There'll have to be some method in which you can convey the water over the top,
well, somebody said,
underneath Avenue T.
is it the Fish and Game that's planting trout there, or what's the deal?
Not quite yet. Not quite yet. But you can see, here's a little video showing the actual operation of the structure as it's being undone in our drone footage that allows us to be able to see that. You can see it's just a hand manually operated item that gets the water flowing. A little speeded up photography here for
That turnout has been used before, hasn't it?
No, this is a blow off. It's not even a turnout. It's a blow off on the bottom of the field. And actually that structure was manufactured by our staff. It was created and fabricated here. You can see the work that's being done. My general manager's report will become a little dry, so we'll try to add flavor to them.
It worked.
Moving forward to the more dry part of the report, we have our current flow is about 14 million gallons a day. You can see last year we were 25.3 million gallons a day. It's a very wet period and there's not much demand out there. The flows at the actual treatment plant, we only got 10 million gallons. So you can see Roseman, East Side, Acton with the intertie moving in that location. Our water bank and recovery, we got East Side Water Bank taking 1.6, West Side at 2.0 as far as the outflow out, so we're 3.6, and that's the minimum that's necessary to keep the system fresh. You can see that actual water banking, putting water in, you can see that we're, the West Side Water Bank is current recharge is 144 acre feet a day, so we're trying to get some water in the bank during this Article 21 period. I also wanted to let you know that we received today our LEED Gold certification for this building.
Oh,
so
great.
we were able to accomplish that goal and get sufficient points to be a LEED Gold facility, and so let you know that. I know that Rob would be jumping
Yes.
for joy right now. So, as far as water quality goes, our THMs remain well below the internal goal of 64 parts per billion. And we completed our initial quarterly sampling for 1, 2, 3 TCP in all of our wells. We had everything was non-detect. That's a very important aspect because that is that has a contaminant level in parts per trillion, and it's can be very difficult thing. So that's very good news for our agency that all of our monitoring wells don't have any 123 TCP in them. I wanted to also provide you, the board asked me to provide you with some legislative updates. On your desk before you, you can see that there was, this is a legislative update that received from the state water contractors. There's a total of 27 measures that were introduced that were water related in the legislature. And there's some narrative that you can read and look into, but we'll be through the state water contractors in Townsend, be looking at all of these legislative matters through the course of the year as they progress through. One thing too, I wanted to let you know about that the groundwater basin boundary modifications under SGMA have been finalized for all the agencies that wanted to adjust those basin boundaries. That was completed, and we've looked at the basin boundaries for our particular area, and it pretty much all stayed the same. So nothing significant has changed there. Governor Newsom's administration has continues to be a strong advocate for a budget trailer bill, and this has to do with the safe drinking water policy. It's a major focus for his 219 session, and this bill would create the state mandated safe drinking water fund with fees on water, fertilizer, and dairies. And so that's a key component of his so it's the Aqua as presented an alternative that the governor's office is reviewing as an alternative to the water taxes that he's proposing, and the taxes on fertilizer and dairies.
What about, I got a question. What's the dairies got to do with it?
Because the dairies have wastewater contaminants that potentially can contaminate the water and cause some of the issues that some of these disadvantaged communities have. So that's why they're taxing the dairies.
So why does the whole state have to get hit with this?
I can't answer why. I'm just saying this is what's being proposed, and there's a lot of opposition to it because, you know, from a practical matter, the administration is very, very difficult to do from a practical matter, and also there's the equity issue of why should others have to pay for bad planning by some other, you know, rural agencies.
What the sad thing is, where this is going, is next will be horses. I mean, you'll be, some of the horses, but the biggest thing is going to be dogs, because where do people dispose of their dogs? In landfills.
Right. There's just a lot.
And then after that, it'll be the hummingbirds. So I mean, it just never stops.
It does. So from a status and update, we have the Water Master meeting that will occur tomorrow at 10 o'clock in this building. The Urban Water Institute Spring Conference is the 27th through the 3rd. I think it's the 1st. And then we have our High Desert Water Bank Value Engineering Workshop between the 4th and the 6th, which is Monday through Thursday of next week, and the CP Roundtable on the 7th and 8th. And I plan to be in the office the next couple of weeks, if I'm, other than the Urban Water Institute. That concludes my manager's report after answering questions that you may have.
Thank you for your report. Item 9, committee meeting recap report for informational purposes only.
We have none.
Okay, perfect. Item 10, director's report. Do any of the directors have anything to report? Okay. Attorney's report.
Nothing to report.
Thank you. Item 12, closed session. Do we have a need to go into closed session tonight?
We do on items D and
E and what, I'm sorry?
D and
Oh, D and E. Okay, so let's take a 5-minute recess.
I'll move.
3-minute
I'll move
recess.
going to close that.
Thank you. Second. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, we'll be back in 3 minutes. Just 2 over 5.